Hey, the Seagulls are here.
Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of season 2 of Foggy with a Chance of Seagulls. I am Evan, joined as always by my good friend and now 30-year-old friend, Clark.
Ugh.
How's it going, Clark?
We really had to out me right away. Ouch. It's good. I am filled with a lot of butterflies and stress for this weekend's or this Sunday's Super Bowl, to which I don't think anyone's surprised to hear the 49ers are playing. And Evan mentioned this in our first episode, but I created a Substack blog at the beginning of the year, this being my 30th year, and wrote some thoughts on the Super Bowl and keys to victory and just trying out a little football writing before the baseball season comes out here. So, if you're interested in checking that out, I'll be posting it to my social media, but it's Clark's Substack is what it's called. Very original title. But yeah, go ahead and check that out.
I feel like you're a little bit at the end. I won't spoil it too much, but you kind of have a history with Kansas City and San Francisco both. And it was really sweet, just like how the connection is there with your family. So it would be great to see the Niners close the deal this year.
Yeah, I will not be happy either way, but I will be sending a lot of, oh, congrats to you, to a lot of family members if the Chiefs win. So I'll pretend to be happy either way. Anyway, Niners talk brought to you by, oh no, just kidding. Moving on to Giants baseball. We've had a few things happen in the last couple weeks since we recorded. And we're getting very close to a couple of deadlines and spring training stuff. But yeah, what are your thoughts right now? We're recording on Wednesday, February 7th. This will be posted a few days after that. Yeah, what are you thinking about the Giants right now? Anything changed since we last talked? Or yeah, what's going on in your head right now?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's an interesting. This has obviously been a frustrating offseason for many fans, and I think why that is just it's been felt like a long waiting game for something to happen, and
we're still waiting,
and we're still waiting. We're very much still waiting. We're getting older, and I think what we've been seeing lately, I feel are hopefully precursors to something finally happening. I think there's a few signs that point in that direction.
I agree.
So recently we made a little trade, trading Ross Stripling to the A's, and on the surface, you know, on the day of, we were texting about this, and I was like, I don't understand what this is. He's like our number 2 starter on the depth chart. Why are we trading him? But I think that paired with the fact that Grant Brisbee tweeted that on Valentine's Day, so the 14th next week, will be when it's possible to move players to the 60-day IL. And now that we have Ray and Cobb, who are definitely both going, that'll open, I think, the 2 roster spots that we might need. Another roster spot was filled by somebody small, Ethan Small, who's definitely not making it another 2 weeks with this team. But
I don't know, man. I could see him actually. Real quick thing on Ethan Small, why I have opinions on this, no one knows, but I think it'll be interesting to see if he battles Eric Miller for the second lefty in the bullpen role. Not to get too in the weeds, but the Giants only have Taylor Rogers on the major league roster, who's a left-handed reliever. And Ethan Small has a little bit of big league experience. The reason he was on waivers is because his limited big league experience was not great. But it was a small sample size. I'm going to keep making those jokes, but I think we've got Eric Miller, who we got from the Phillies last offseason in a trade for Junior Marte. I think building out the left-handed relievers, which will probably only have 2 starting on opening day. Mm-hmm. But Scott Alexander's still out there. We could sign him to a minor league deal, invitation to camp and stuff. But I think it's interesting from that perspective. And then when we put Cobb and Ray on the 60-day IL, both of them will be removed from the 40-man until they need to be activated. So we will have 2 additional 40-man spots too. So I think it's highly likely we've seen Farhan do this throughout his entire time, is, claim a guy and then 2 weeks later DFA him. But I'm curious to see if we might see a small appearance on the big league roster sometime. And
he doubled down.
I cede my time.
He doubled down, much as Farhan. No, this is not going to work. But I think Farhan just got anxious that there was a free 40-man spot, and he felt like he had to fill it.
I saw Bags tweet that exact same thing. He was like, it was 5 days the Giants having an empty 40-man spot. I thought I needed to do a wellness check on Farhan.
I mean, it's true considering his track record. But, we've been hearing talks with XYZ free agent for months and months and months. And ultimately, pitchers and catchers are reporting within a matter of days, not months now. Yeah. So it's about time that we finalize this roster here, I think, in the next few weeks. And so, and there's still some big names on the board, kind of the biggest free agent targets that are out there: Chapman, Bellinger, there's Snell, there's Montgomery on the pitching side. And I think that at this point, you can expect to see one of those guys on the Giants next year. I don't know who it is, but it feels to me like you don't get rid of Stripling for no reason. I mean, I think that all signs are pointing to, really relying on the young guys this year. I'm really excited, honestly, about Beck and Harrison and Wynn, and I think that we're big fans of them, and so I think that they can play a big role. But I think you need a little bit more certainty. Hicks, is an experiment ultimately, and so I think it's like you can't have Webb and then 4 question marks after him going into the season. Yeah. So I think
that's really interesting. If I can just interject real quick on that point, because I think how this offseason ends is going to be very fascinating to see what the overall goal of both contending, but as we talked about last time, of the contending this year as best as we can, but also kind of gearing towards truly contending in 2025 seems like the goal right now. And I don't think the front office wants to say that because it'll anger a lot of Giants fans. But I think that's clear from the moves. But I think looking at this as a Cobb and Ray come back after the All-Star break, I think Cobb might come back a little bit sooner than that. But the idea that going into the second half of the year, we're projecting Webb, Ray, Cobb, Harrison, Hicks, I would imagine, is the idea of the 5-man rotation. And so in the meantime, having Beck and Wynn, who got a little starting experience last year, giving them a runway to just prove it, basically, whether that's as a trade chip potentially at the trade deadline or just frankly knowing what we have with these guys. It feels like if they don't sign a starter, then the plan is this high risk, high reward kind of starting rotation that's very homegrown. And then we have guys like Mason Black, Carson Wisenhunt. We have Trevor McDonald, who is on the 40-man, but I would imagine he's more of a reliever or swingman type if we do use him, and then Kai-Wei Tang as well. So we have all these arms in the minors, and it's interesting to me if we go in this year with no free agent starting pitchers, because that'll say a lot about what the intention of the season is to me. So just wanted to make that point real quick. But
to go off of that, I mean, this is a little bit of an aside, but I've been thinking this whole offseason, especially with the way that, we're kind of gearing up for 2025 and 2024, I feel like a Brandon Woodruff deal is like a Farhan thing, waiting to happen. And I feel like if we're looking at 2025, why not go all the way? We're essentially getting Ray for next year and the year after that. Hopefully, Cobb hopefully successfully comes back and I don't know. I just feel like he'd be a great fit.
Last year is this year. Is Cobb done after this year with us?
I don't know
if that's true or not. I think this might be his last year under contract though.
I see him staying with us. I don't know why. I don't know why. Like,
I
even
could
if
see it
he's
too.
not under contract, I could see him coming back. But in any case, it feels like it could work. But I want to pose a question to you, which is, lately we've been seeing some talks about Jorge Soler potentially coming to the Giants. That we are in these, very vague talks. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so one of the things with Soler is he has some pretty insane right-handed power that if you look at like a spray chart of his home runs, all of them leave Oracle Park. So
Yeah.
it's not one of those where and this is actually my big fear with Bellinger, is that his power is not going to translate as well to 18 or to Oracle Park. And so I think Soler represents offensively a much higher upside than like a Bellinger or a Chapman. Now, Bellinger and Chapman, a big part of their value is their defensive expertise, I guess, at their various positions. Bellinger at like 3 different positions. But Soler, if the intention is to have him be what Jock was last year, then I trust Soler's track record a little bit more and just the success he's had over the last few years. He was so good for Atlanta when they won the World Series in 21. He hit 36 home runs for the Marlins, who have a harder ballpark for right-handed hitters. So I'm intrigued by it, but the question I come back to is always, where does he fit? Because we've got a lot of kind of similar players or type players at various positions that I don't want to say block him, but this was my issue with the Rhys Hoskins conversation, is like, where would he go? Where would he play? And I think Soler is a DH only. So that's my concern. But yeah, what are your thoughts?
It's interesting because, last episode we discussed how there's kind of this fallacy of what a lot of fans are doing of just like, who's the biggest name left on the free agent list and we should get them just because we should and whatever. And I think that the way the chips have fallen, Soler seems like a possible option. I think that the right-handed power is interesting. I think Susan Slusher said something about like maybe he could be the first person to hit the glove out in left field.
That's wild, but
but I think there's like I ultimately we'd be bringing in Soler to not really play the field too much. Ultimately, he's not really a defensive player at this point, and so kind of then it's a comparison to me between JD Martinez and Jorge Soler in terms of like filling this type of role.
DH only.
Yeah, DH only. And I think with Soler, there's pros and cons. I think he's, looking at his career, he's hit over 20 home runs. How many times? 3 times in his career. And he's been in the league since 2014. So there's a little bit of consistency questions there for me. Like he has, I think in the last few years, especially, you can't discount what he did for, like you said, the Braves in the playoffs. He had that monster year with the Royals in 2019 where he hit 48 home runs. But kind of like Bellinger, it's that platform year performance thing that a little bit concerns me. Just in terms of if he'll be able to replicate. He had some health issues in 2022 and has, I think, had some health issues throughout his career too. So if a guy's just going to hit, like you need to make sure that this is a guy who's just going to hit. Ultimately, I'd be happy with either of them. I think that we need more power in this lineup. I saw something that Farhan said to the effect of like, homers are important and we may or may not hit them, or so it's like something like that. It's like, it was like in 2022, we were like middle of the pack. And then I think 2023, it got worse because just because they hit around the same amount, like 170, 180, but like the league just started hitting more homers last year.
You're right.
And I think that a power bat like that is just important because you can't always be playing small ball. Like it's not in today's game, like you need that power. So I'd be happy to see him come by. I'd be happy to see Martinez come by. But yeah, I don't know. My like brother mentioned it to me when we were talking recently, and I was about the talks, and if I've learned anything this offseason, it's not to trust any Giants are in talks with XYZ. It's like they're keeping their plans on the DL. So I'm almost inclined to say that he's not going to come, but who knows at this point? Like, I think that we will, I don't know. I think that we will see Chapman or Bellinger or somebody, or I don't know, Snell, maybe somebody come through, these guys that have been connected to us for so long. But at this point, it's been such a zig when the others zag type offseason. I'm not exactly sure anymore what's going to happen, to be honest.
Yeah. I think with the JD Martinez and Soler conversation, it just makes me question what, if we were to sign one of those two guys, what Wilmer and Conforto's roles would be on the team. I think Conforto would immediately be kind of penciled in as our everyday left fielder. But Wilmer, I think Wilmer is an interesting one to project for this next year, because last year, for about the first month and a half, he didn't play that much. And I think that's actually part of why he had such a great second half of the year, was because, I mean, if you've watched him run, you realize he is on the older side of things. And I say that as a devout Wilmer stan. I love the boy. But he, I think, is a first baseman and DH at this point in his career. Yeah. And early in his Giants tenure, he played a little bit second base, started opening day at third base last year. I think he can fill in at third, fine. But I think he's mostly a DH. And if our DH position is going to be Wilmer and Conforto, and Matos or Ramos takes the starting left fielder job next year, I think that's a fine DH kind of platoon. And if we sign Chapman, then JD Davis's natural position will have to be DH for us as well, unless we trade him, which we could, but nothing imminent. So I think the roster building piece of it is so interesting, because it's so easy to sit here and be like, sign Bellinger, Chapman, and Soler. Come on. What are you doing, Farhan? It's like, well, we have guys who are under contract who would there and then be blocked by those moves. So I feel like you have to talk about what we would subtract, or how we would manage the guys currently on the roster if we were to make a move like that. And I don't have necessarily an answer for that. I don't know if you do. And if you do, please jump in. But that's where my brain always goes with this. It's like, okay, so we have, 13 spots available for our offense, 13 on our active roster for the pitching. And if, right now we're pretty set with our roster, we can go through it, but I'm not going to at the moment. But adding these guys means taking certain guys off the roster. And, a JD Davis, a Michael Conforto, a Wilmer Flores, shout out the Mets organization. All, their roles then change based on whoever we sign, kind of thing. Yeah, so
yeah, I guess
it's just a little complicated, I guess,
Yeah, I it's been interesting because I saw a quote about, I forget what player they had mentioned. Oh, it was I think somebody asked Farhan about Brandon Belt, potentially coming back, because you look at free agent hitters and he had one of the best years of any of them last year. But he was talking about just from a handedness perspective, bringing him back pushes Conforto to, the outfield or something, which they weren't trying to do. But I'm confused. Why is Conforto that limited defensively that you don't want him out there left?
He seemed good in right field last year, serviceable in right field, which left field is easier, especially at home.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm not saying it was ideal, but we've had Travis Ishikawa, Aubrey Huff play in left field.
Home of that left field is now going, well, Michael Conforto, career outfielder, can't hang. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. I agree.
I guess I feel like, to me, you take away a little bit of Conforto's value by making him this DH type player. And obviously, there's an argument to be made that you put him at DH, maybe that lets him focus on hitting and whatever, and not playing the field. But I don't know. I feel like there's room if they get one of these guys. It's not. But at the same time, I think a DH, it's not a must per se. I think that you can, it could be coming through. I think they're not as talented offensively, but like Chapman or Bellinger like plays a similar role in that way. I think that at the end of the day, with baseball, we've got creaky guys on the team. Somebody's going to get injured. Something's going to happen. Like people go up and down. People that you expect to be good are not going to be good. People, vice versa. And so I kind of feel like at this point, like with players like those two, it's a little easier for me to swallow to bring them in because it's going to be on a shorter term deal. Like you're not sliding Soler to a 5-year deal or something like that, where you might do that with Chapman or Bellinger. And same with Martinez at this age. He's like 36 now. So you can get him for 1 or 2 years and it doesn't really like hamper the long-term plans. And if they don't work out, cut bait, whatever. It doesn't really like make a difference to me. But anyway,
yeah,
that's kind of how I feel about it. Yeah.
Switching gears real quick. So, you know, that's kind of the season left. I feel like we've hit both the pitching and the offense side. One of the things that since we last recorded that happened was the Hall of Fame vote. Did you pay much attention to that? If I remember correctly, Beltre, Helton, and Mauer were the inductees. Did I miss anyone?
Yeah. No,
that's just those three? Yeah. Todd Helton was my favorite non-Giant as a kid.
That's a great point. And
I am so glad he made the Hall of Fame. I feel like the Rockies get a lot of disrespect Hall of Fame voting because of Coors' like, you know, offensive numbers stuff. But like there's a lot of data now that shows that their road numbers are actually more affected because of the change in altitude. So these guys are legitimately good players. But yeah, stoked to see Helton get in.
Real quickly, his career line is 316, 414, 539. And I know that Coors is a part of that, but that's insane.
It is insane. Jesus. God, he was good. He was really good. And you know, a fun fact about, we were talking about football. Fun fact about him was he was the quarterback at the University of Tennessee right before Peyton Manning.
Oh.
Peyton Manning took the job from Todd Helton when he graduated.
That's crazy.
Yeah, fun fact. Why I know that? No idea. But and I could be making it up. But anyway, my question for you. You can't. The internet doesn't exist when you're listening to Foggy or the Chance of Sequel. But my question for you, though, so Beltre made a ton of sense. That was expected. Helton has been on the ballot for a while. The big one to me is Joe Mauer. A, do you agree with him being a Hall of Famer? And what do you think this means for our boy Buster when he's on the ballot?
Yeah. I like that alliteration there. I think Mauer definitely deserves to be in. I think that there's a lot of I think when you look at the Hall of Fame, I mean, we've got our qualms. Until my boy Barry gets inducted, it's a damn sham across the board. So let's say that much. But I think I like the idea of rewarding guys that have been with one team their whole career. Helton's a great example, 16 years with the Rockies. And Mauer's just had a 10-year stretch of dominance as, you know, the best catcher in baseball. Obviously, Buster gave him a run for his money, but that level of offensive production, I think that people get on him because of the the switch to first base, and then he wasn't a catcher the whole time, and all this.
And he wasn't really even that good as a hitter at first base either at that point in his career. But there's enough data to explain why, from a health perspective. We don't need to go into that, but keep going.
But I think it's definitely. I mean, you called this early of the comparison between the two of them, between Buster and Joe Mauer, and I think that I think what the players that should go in the Hall of Fame, I don't really care about counting stats personally. I care that you are an iconic player in the sport, and to me, Joe Mauer is definitely iconic in Minnesota to start out with. But when you think of that era of baseball, mid 2000s to mid 2010s, who else are you naming in that same breath as Joe Mauer?
You can't tell the story of the 2010s or the 2000s rather without Joe Mauer. You just can't.
Yeah. And like go look at his numbers and what he was doing as a catcher, which as a reminder is the hardest position to make offense come from. So and then as far as that applies to Buster, I think it's pretty, there's quite a similarity there, but with Buster, I think you have to factor in the fact that which side is it? The 3 rings. Do you know what I mean?
The 3 rings.
Put a rubber band on my hand. The 3 rings. But you have to, and I think that I think if voters like don't vote for him because his career is shorter, I think that's such a short-sighted thing. But how do you feel about it?
Yeah, you nailed it with all the Mauer stuff. I think I'm like a shelter animal when it comes to the Hall of Fame, the Giants, where it's like if Barry doesn't get in, then no one, like you can make an argument for anyone not getting in. And obviously his is PED related and we don't have to go down that whole thing. But like to me, Buster was a Hall of Famer the entire time he was a Giant. It was so clear. And when we talk about those World Series teams, if we look back 20 years later and no one other than potentially Bruce Bochy is in the Hall of Fame, that will feel, it won't feel like it represents what those teams were. And it's very clear as two people who followed those teams very closely at the time that Buster was the key to that. I mean, we don't win the first one without him as a superstar rookie catcher, and you can go down the line. But makes me excited that not only did Mauer make it, but he made it on his first try on the ballot. Yeah. That meant a lot to me. So True. Even if there's a little bias against the West Coast or people can poke holes in Buster's candidacy, it feels more and more likely to me now that he can make it in the 10 tries. But yeah, to my Barry point too, I just wanted to mention, I also can't believe Jeff Kent's not a Hall of Famer. Can we just say that? I think he was such a dominant offensive second baseman and underrated defensively, at least my memory, but I was like 8 years old when he was a player, so maybe my defensive acumen is not super high, but
he was just catching a ball. That's another one. You're like, oh my God, look what he did.
How did he do it?
No, that's a great shout out though. And I will say in terms of other snubs from the Hall, in thinking about Buster's case, I didn't make this connection, but I think it might have been Grant who wrote his article about the parallel to Jorge Posada,
who's not in, which is insane also too. He has kind of similar lifetime numbers to Buster too, like similar amount of hits, similar WAR, all this stuff. And Posada made the postseason 15 times. Being a catcher for 15 years and being effective is insane. So, and I think that was a little bit longer ago that happened. And obviously what happened more recently. He got punished because of how good those Yankees teams were too. That there was like an easy way to be like, well, he was, a product of whatever, which is kind of what they say on Purdy on the Niners. But like a catcher and quarterback are very similar positions. Like you set people up. You are the general on the field. You hold a lot of power and knowledge and influence that can't be summed up in, well, he batted .275 and had X number of hits. It's like those Yankee teams were really good with or without Posada, but I think he was such a key. So anyway, this is not Foggy with a chance of Jorge Posadas, but
why does it sound kind of tasty? A Jorge Posada.
It does.
I kind of want to eat that.
Delizio.
Spanish episode coming soon. I just have to learn Spanish.
Yeah, I'm going to have Rainer Arias' dad on the show who followed me on Twitter, and it was a big moment in my life. Anyway, yeah. Any other thoughts on the Hall of Fame? Please do. I shifted without permission, so
You were just going R&D, just no thought of what was going to happen. By the way, there's so many of those letters, I don't know what they do. But I wanted to quickly talk about our good friends over in Los Angeles, the Dodgers.
Do we have to?
I'm going to make us. And part of the reason why is after I went to visit Clark a couple weeks ago, I went down to LA for a wedding and to see some
enemy
friends.
territory.
I did. Disguised.
He snuck into Fans Fest. Yeah. Had a sign that said, "Shohei, I love you." Oh, sorry.
No, I wore this hat pretty much the whole time I was down there. But apparently my friend Piers, shout out to him, he wears a Padres hat sometimes, and apparently Dodgers fans give him crap for it all the time. And that's interesting because that's not even as much of a rivalry. But why I bring up the Dodgers is partially because walking through LAX, I had to endure walking past the tourist shops and seeing Ohtani in blue and white plastered everywhere, which was painful. But I think what's made the rounds recently, and I just feel like I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about it, is that there was a lot said about some certain quotes that came out from Dave Roberts, Mookie Betts, Bueller, a lot of the team about what happened this offseason. And granted, it's they were at a fan fest, so they're pandering, optimism's at an all-time high for them. And, what else are the players going to say? But I just wanted to read a couple quotes out here. Which one? There's a couple from Betts that I think are notable. One, he said, somebody's bankroll may be a little longer. There's nothing you can do about it, and it is what it is. They used it. Sorry. And then the one that really went around was, every game is going to be the other team's World Series. Again, it is what it is. It's what we signed up for. And let me just read a couple more, actually. Walker Buehler said, I just think it's interesting. Everybody says we can't get it done, and then we get it done. And then we're the villains because we went and got some good players. And then Gavin Luck said, how can you not go out there and try to get the best players possible? 29 other teams could have done it, so I don't see how it could be bad for baseball if everybody else could have done it. These are a lot of inflammatory statements, even, stripping them of their context. So I just want to see how you respond to all of that.
Yeah. I mean, it just reminds me so much of the Warriors when we got KD, that it's this doomsday feeling across the league. And it's interesting to be on the opposite side of things, because I was very much in the camp of it was free agency. He could go wherever he wanted, and it's good for the league. It brings up the level of competition. And I agree with that now that the shoe's on the other foot, even though I hate the Dodgers for being that team. And I think it's, back in the KD Warrior era, I think in this era too with the Dodgers, it's it adds a lot to the entertainment value of the sport when you do have this dominant team. And I think Mookie is 100% correct. Every time the Dodgers play a team, they're going to be geared up to beat them. And the toll that will take on the Dodgers, I don't think gets discussed enough of they on paper have more talent than any other team, but they're going to have to earn a World Series. And baseball is the ultimate team sport. Depends who's hot at the right time, what injury luck, all of it. And honestly, I'm stoked to go and see how this plays out for them. Because I think there are some we were talking about, the risks that our rotation has, but the Dodgers rotation has a lot of interesting injury issues and question marks in general that I'll be interested to see play out. But it helps when you've got a top three of Betts, Freeman, and Ohtani. I would take that. And even saying that
I haven't gotten used to hearing that.
Hurts. No, it hurts. I just keep thinking, thank God they didn't keep Seager. Obviously, they wouldn't. I don't think they'd have Freeman if they kept Seager because it was the same offseason. But ugh.
But I mean, look, they spent basically 1.2 something billion this offseason. They can afford it clearly. They could have kept Seager, Turner if they wanted to.
Shohei's not getting his money until 2035, so they had the space to do it. But
and maybe this is obvious, but that is so much of how that is him taking that deferred money is such a big reason that their offseason went the way that it went. And I think it was interesting. There's a quote from Freeman who was talking about who's the guy who runs the Dodgers? Friedman. And he said, he told me plan A, B, and C and what we were going to try and do. Freeman said, a mere 1.2 billion plus later, obviously plan A was plan A that succeeded. And I think it's interesting just to make that contrast with the Giants, because obviously there's this narrative that we finish second, third, runners up for everybody. And I think that there's two things I want to say about the Dodgers. One is that it's really like the team as it's constructed right now has so many eminently likable guys all together in one roster, and for all those guys to come together and become this evil empire thing, I kind of like all sports need a heel, and they're just leaning into it. So on that level, I kind of there's something fun about
frankly,
it.
who else would be the heel in baseball? The Astros were for half a decade. That, that's kind of faded. I think it's good to have the Dodgers as the heel. They check all the boxes that the Yankees did when we were kids of like, they spend the most, they buy talent, they're, yada, yada. But yeah, I'm fine with it. And I like your point about the option A, B, and C, because, there's a scenario where, because we know what the Giants option A was, it was the same as theirs. Ohtani and Yamamoto. And the fan base is in a completely different place. The Giants get their option A. And the likelihood we can, we have previously, but like just in a vacuum, what's not to be stoked about if you're the Dodgers? Because we would feel the same way if we were them.
Yeah.
So
I think there was something like, I think I read it. The thing that Lux said or whatever, that like, how can you not go out there and try to get the best players possible? Like,
totally agree.
It's their prerogative. It's what they're going to do. Hopefully not an omen of what happens on the Super Bowl.
No shit.
But I think like Kyle Harrison at FanFest San Jose, or I forget which place, he said, just want to read a quote. He said, somebody asked him about the Dodgers and facing them, and he said, sounds like it'll be fun. I think it'll look really good to get them out. Anyone here will tell you that you can't be scared. We're not going to be scared or back down. They're just like anyone else. They'll make outs as well, so why not? And I love that attitude. I love that we have like some younger guys with some like something to prove. I think a lot of our young guys, it's their second year, maybe third year, trying to really establish themselves in the majors. And so that's the kind of energy that we need. But I think back to the plan A thing, it's like, I'd be interested to know like what plan we're on for the Giants right now. Like, I don't know if this is B, C, D, F, X. Like, I'm not sure which one this is. But I will say about the Dodgers, they are like in 2022, this was even, before this offseason, Dave Roberts proclaimed that the Dodgers were going to win the World Series that year. And of course, the Astros won the World Series that year. And I think there's nothing quite as satisfying as seeing the Dodgers choke and choke and choke again. And,
and the stakes are even higher now. It'll be even more entertaining.
Yeah. And I go back and forth on how I feel about that 2020 championship. Some days I'm like, it's legit. Some days I don't feel like it is. But that's all they have to show for it in a way, in terms of pennants that you can put up in the rafters. That's all they have to show for it. Kershaw just re-signed this week. He's going to try one more time, maybe two more times. I think he has an option for 2026 as well. But, they have these generational talents, and now failure for them, I think success was just getting into the postseason every year. And that was like, they're happy to accept that. But now the stakes are raised, championship or bust. So the Giants, as always, are being counted out by everybody. And look, if you look at the National League this year, as we've been saying, we're not necessarily in direct competition with the Dodgers. Of course we are, but we're really in competition with, the Cubs and the Brewers and the Phillies and, these teams that are competing for those wild card spots. And the Giants, I think the Pacoda projections just came out, which is like basically they run 1,000 simulations of what could happen and kind of take the average for next year. And we're at 81 and 81, and we're kind of, which is so Giants to be projected to be classic. A 500 team. But, a few things break right for us, a few things break wrong for other teams. We're right there in it. And as the D-back showed, you just got to get in the dance, and then you never know what's going to happen. And as the Dodgers and Freeman admitted, you can't buy a championship. It's not possible in baseball, especially, even more so than basketball. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. And if the Dodgers and when the Dodgers choke again this year, I will be laughing all the way home.
Yep. There are two teams that I'm cheering for this year: the Giants and whoever the hell are playing the Dodgers.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
But yeah, switching to the last topic I wanted to talk about, going into kind of this pre-spring training, is, did you see that we had a Willie Mays Day in San Francisco?
I think you're gonna have to tell me a little bit more about that. I saw it kind of after the fact, but
I don't know a ton. But I saw, London Breed had Barry Bonds at a press conference and was wearing a. Shout out to my buddy Frack and the rap group Family Not a Group out of San Francisco, who have a song that does not speak too highly of London Breed.
London Breed diss track?
At that.
I love that.
Pretty much. I wish I could remember the name of the title right now, but just search their discography. They make great music.
On the screen right here.
It was on their album from last year, but and a fun video too. They also don't mince words about Joe Biden either. Anyway, not a political podcast. But London Breed at a press conference and just shouted out Willie Mays and had Barry Bonds there and was wearing a Willie Mays jersey, and was like, 2-4 day is his jersey number
24, I guess. Why, right?
Yeah.
So it's just a one-time thing?
Oh, I guess it was just for this year. I see. That makes sense why I hadn't heard of this before.
I don't know. I'm just guessing. I'm not really plugged into what London Breed's up to.
I didn't even remember it was 2024. But yeah, anyway, that's kind of all it was. But I love the city of San Francisco trying to capitalize on Willie Mays.
I think there's never a bad time to just shout out Willie Mays and talk about how much of a legend he was. I actually wanted to share a little bit of a story that I just read on in the depths of MLB.com. For Black History Month, they ran an article about Willie Mays and Hank Aaron and the link between them. At the time, there was kind of like, there was the GOAT of baseball debate between the two. In the 50s, 60s, they were among the best in the game. And I just thought it was so funny, the parallels between that article and this one. But when Willie Mays was a Giant, Hank Aaron was, I think he was 18 or 19 at the time, and he had one like partial season in the Negro Leagues, and he was playing and he was being heavily scouted by all these teams. And there's some conflicting reports on really what happened, but how he tells it is he had an offer in hand from the Braves and the Giants. And so the Giants actually finished as runners up to the Braves for Hank Aaron because
triggering.
Super triggering. But because of apparently, so he signed with the Braves for $10,000 in 1952 money. And the difference in the offers was $500, which is like, I think like $4,000 or something in present day with present day inflation. So just thinking about that and like the possibility that like Aaron and Mays could have played together is insane. But still, even with the way that things played out, there's such a linkage between those two like legends with Bonds and everything, and passing Aaron and I don't know, like that era of baseball. Like I love that era and the excellence of Black athletes at the time. And I hope that one day we can see a resurgence in baseball, because I think it was just such an athletic time in baseball, and Willie Mays was such an athlete and just all around like such a good ambassador of the sport. So shout out Willie Mays forever. And sorry to tell you about another runner-up moment that the Giants have had in history. I just quickly wanted to shout out a couple random Giants goings on here as we wrap up. Number one, if you remember Gabe Kapler's, he had some photo shoots with his big muscles out. And if you want his spiritual predecessor, if you want a spiritual predecessor, or no, what's the word? Post-decessor. Jung Hoo Lee just did a fashion shoot, which you can check out on his Instagram. Great pics. The dude's a legend. The drip is unreal. Also, with Gabe Kapler, he started a TikTok, and if you want some unhinged content, gotta head on over.
It's incredible. My favorite still is from a few weeks ago when he was walking through the streets of Miami and talking about how if your app says it'll take 20 minutes to Uber, or it'll take 10 minutes to Uber, but 20 minutes to walk, you just need to walk faster and you can make it there in 15 and you'll enjoy the experience even more. And it was just the most astounding video I've ever watched. It just, I feel like I'm now way more open to the ridiculousness of Kapler. And you and I made fun of him as a Giants manager, but I think we both liked him too. So I felt like I was defending him and trying to keep myself from poking fun as much as I now feel completely at liberty to do. But
I seeing these TikToks, it makes me wonder how he ever managed 25 guys in a club. Like, I don't even know like what he was saying to like, I like just day to day beyond the like the game strategy and everything, just like on a man-to-man basis, just communicating with people. Have no idea how that worked out, but shout out to him. He's now in the front office now with the Marlins. And I think he'll do great there, honestly. And also just to eulogize a few other former Giants.
Eulogize as if they're dead.
R.I.P. Jacob Junis went to the Brewers for 1 year, $9 million. I like that for him. He's going to be
Me too.
Basically, the theme of the Giants from last year that have left is these guys that have been in these hybrid roles finding starting jobs elsewhere. So Junis going to the Brewers. He's going to be in the rotation, so they've said. Alex Wood to the A's, 1 year, 8.5. Brebbia is going to the White Sox, 1 year, 5.5 million. I'm sad to see him go. He was a fun Giant. I think they tried to pigeonhole him into the Brandon Belt role that he never could like live up to that in terms of being.
I thought he was great, but I enjoyed him that way.
But I think for like real or like not real, for very involved Giants fans, I think we knew. But I think to like the average fan, they never really got a sense of like his personality. But anyway, shout out to him. He was a good Giant. And also, I just quickly wanted to, I met Clark's friend Ben, shout out. As we said, we are shouting out friends at the end of the podcast, so you have to listen to the whole thing. We're forcing you to. But just the Giants-Mariners connection this offseason continues to be hilarious. Obviously there was the big trade of Disco and Haniger for Ray, but then I went and looked through all the Mariners little deals, and there's just so many Giants names in their system right now. They just signed Heath Hembry to a minors deal. They traded for Gregory Santos, and then in that trade, Prelander Baroa went over to the White Sox. They claimed Mauricio Llovera from the Sox. They signed Giants legend Michael Papierski, if you remember him. I think he played all of 5 games for the Giants. Dubon trade, yeah. And then, obviously Castillo's there. Ray, although DeSclafani's now gone to the Guardians, but just so funny. They're so addicted to our players. But I just had to, once I saw the Heath Hembry deal, I was like, what is going on? They really are playing to the stereotype at this point. Yeah. And then also,
funny.
Of course, Jock Peterson has now gone to the D-backs as well. 1 year, 12.5. And all I'll say is I have love for Jock. I think that he's a good guy. maybe he hit the Pusoy a little too hard last year. But I saw a picture on Twitter. Somebody commented on him saying he was going to the D-backs, and they said, "I don't blame you for leaving San Francisco. Whole city has turned into poop emoji." And he liked that, and I don't like that. He liked that. So maybe a little bit of bad blood for, I hope that Tommy Pham joins the D-backs too, and they have to sit next to each other in the clubhouse. But anyway, I think, do you have any other closing thoughts that you want to share before we wrap up here?
Nothing that big. I think just the Kapler thing with Jung-Hoo Lee kind of being the like fashion icon replacement. It just represents to me such a shift culturally on this team with like Melvin, with Jung-Hoo Lee. I think even though it feels like we aren't doing as much as we would want, and I think a lot of Giants fans are very frustrated, I think just the culture shift alone. I mean, this is a team when we first started this podcast last summer that was the third, fourth best record in the National League. And they tailed off at the end. And I think there's, you know, you can say that the reason for that was the lack of cohesion on the major league roster and the like mediocrity across our kind of back end of the rotation that we didn't even trust to start games, these swingman roles and all this stuff. And I think we've corrected that. And people are kind of like, we traded Stripling, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, but like people are like, I'm not going to give Farhan credit for a mistake he made last year. But I think there is a lot to be said for evaluating what you did wrong the year before and correcting those mistakes. Yeah. We don't have an abundance of inflexible mediocrity on our roster anymore. And, you know, no offense to Disclafani, Haniger, Stripling, and Wood, but like they were redundant with young players who we can option up and down from AAA. And we have a ton more flexibility and more upside. And those are both wins. So, and, you know, Keaton wins. So I, now that I've turned 30, my dad jokes are getting worse or better, depending on one's perspective.
Please, no. I totally agree. And I think, you know, you look at the last offseason, now that's all we kind of hit the backspace button on all of that. All those players are gone except for Conforto now at this point, I think.
And we would have declined Conforto's option if we could have.
And then I guess Rogers is with us still, but
true.
Yeah, I think
we'll keep him.
I think that we are, you know, we'll see what the on-field results are, but I think there's a lot more intrigue, at least going into this offseason, and it's not even done yet. I think that there's a lot more potential for excitement and fun, which is something that desperately the Giants need. I think Jung-Hoo Lee is just fun. Do you know what I mean? And these young guys, I think once Kyle Harrison, fun. I think once we get these guys to like show a little bit more of their personality, I think that there's I think it's going to be a much more compelling season, even if we're still kind of like in the middle of the pack. I think just getting a few guys to take a step forward, you know, for one of these like experiments to work out, Ray, Hicks, you know, these types of things, I think those could be major wins. So you know, it's funny because we had been waiting for that big signing this whole time. Obviously, we got Lee.
Still waiting.
Ray kind of, I need that on a soundboard for this podcast, but I think Ray kind of functions as one of our like marquee pitchers that we're bringing in. But even with the roster as it is, there's, you know, you don't have to do anything technically. I think a lot of Giants fans would hate hearing that, but there's a lot of upside, I think, that is being underrated in the Pacoda projections or whatever. They're projecting Luciano to basically be a below average player. And I think ultimately, you know, who knows with rookies, but I think that he's going to outperform those projections. And obviously the front office believes that too.
Hopefully. I'm glad you brought up Luciano because I just saw Keith Law on The Athletic released his top 100 prospects for this year. And he is adamant Luciano is not a shortstop and is like, the bat can play, but there's a lot of swing and miss. And he has dropped him the last 2 years down his rankings. He was like a top 20 guy 2 seasons ago and is now in the 60s. But interestingly, Bryce Eldridge is now on everyone's top 100 prospects after just drafting him last year. And I think on most sites, Wizenhunt is an honorable mention. And so I think we're starting to see, more Giants participation in these prospect rankings. And shout out to Roger Munter, who's in the middle of doing his top 50 on his There Are Giants blog, which I absolutely love. But yeah, I mean, Luciano and Matos are going to get a lot of run this year. This is Elliot Ramos's last year to show something. Joey Bart still in the organization, although, we'll see. Yeah, he doesn't have any options. So, and he's not going to be our backup catcher unless Tom Murphy gets hurt, or if Patrick Bailey gets hurt.
Hey, look, we went into the last season with Roberto Perez as our main option, and he got hurt within like 4 days or something. So who knows?
But I think that's a perfect point to all this. Is last year we were still trying to figure out what the roster should look like, and we were still trying to pick a direction. And the front office has picked a direction, and Giants fans are not happy that it's not the like Texas Rangers model of a direction, which is just throw a ton of money. But I think we need to have patience for that and see what these young guys are. And then also appreciate guys like Lamont Wade, Yaz, Wilmer, Tyro, these guys who are not studs, or they are studs. You're a stud. But these guys who are not,
Tyro.
Like, you go girl. But these guys who are not, all-stars necessarily, but like, they're going to be fun to watch. And anyway, I'm going to get off my soapbox. I'm talking too much, but
2 things come up for me and then we can wrap up here. But I think number one, with our farm system, I think, Eldridge being on those lists is huge. And I think that to this point, and I think honestly, fairly, our drafts have been criticized hugely because I think so far Hunter Bishop and Will Bednar look like whiffs. There's still a chance for them to turn it around, but so far it hasn't panned out the way that we wanted it to. But with Eldridge, Crawford, guys like that, like in the system, I think the Giants system has been perpetually underrated for years, and also you never know who's going to make it in the bigs. And then on the flip side, this year, obviously, I don't know. I don't put that much stock in Las Vegas odds for whatever. But if you look at the odds for Rookie of the Year in the NL, we have 3 players on that list. Lee, Harrison, and Luciano are all there. And so clearly, I don't know. Those are to have 3 guys who could be vying realistically for Rookie of the Year, I think is like an exciting thing and something to be looking forward to.
So exciting.
So, anyway, I think I feel good about...
Last point. Sorry, I just want to make one final point on Jung-Hoo, is all these projections have him to be a pretty good offensive player to start his career. And I'm excited to see what his learning curve looks like. But more than anything, all of these projection systems are in agreement that he's going to have one of the lowest strikeout rates in all of baseball, which is something that the Giants have needed, is just exciting plate appearances that aren't 3-2 count and a strikeout, or, just like patience, homer strikeout. And Jung-Hoo is going to be amazing for that. So just wanted to shout that out. I'm stoked for him.
Me too. And I will say, Giants dugout, I'm still waiting for you to make the jersey with his Korean name on the back. I would buy it in an instant. But as we wrap up here, we didn't shout it out at the beginning of the episode, but just a reminder that we do have a voicemail set up, 415-320-7269. Information will be in the description, but we have not gotten a voicemail yet. We would love some. So if you're listening, please do call in and let us know your thoughts. Ask us a question, give us a comment, anger, happiness, whatever. We'll take it.
We take it all.
We'll take it all. But hopefully in our next episode, we'll have some news to share. Don't know. Don't know if there'll be a signing or not,
Hopefully
but
exciting.
we're hopeful. But thank you for joining us, listening to us rant about the Giants for an hour, and we will see you next time on Foggy with a Chance of Seagulls.